website. Please notify the municipal clerk for any disability requirements necessary for attendance at council meetings. The fire exits are located through the double doors to your right and through the door on your left. Please silence all cell phones. Could everyone please stand for a salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilman Bruno? Councilman Casio?
Here.
Councilman Cumming?
Mr. Cumming is not feeling well. He won't be
Councilman Ullman?
Here.
Council President DeSena?
here.
Councilman Bruno's just walked in the door.
Mr. Bruno. Good.
Let the record reflect also in attendance Mayor Calamari, Township Administrator Tovo, Township Attorney Pollard, Township CFO Judy Curran, and Township Clerk Susan Witkowski. Reading a total list of the bills, none this evening. Approval of minutes, May 20th, 2019, regular meeting, May 20th, 2019, conference meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Approval of minutes, June 5th, 2019, regular meeting, June 5th, 2019, conference meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
I think I have to abstain.
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to open the meeting up to the public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody would like to come up and address the council at this time? She beat you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Daisy Velez Martinez, 666 Van Emberg Ave.
Good evening.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Daisy Velez Martinez. I am a mother of 3, high school history teacher, resident, and director of public affairs for Washington Township. I'm here tonight in response to comments and concerns raised at the last council meeting that took place on October 7, 2019, in regards to Town Day. As many would agree, it was a terrific day, and we were blessed with perfect fall festival type weather. However, at the last council meeting, some inflammatory words were used to describe aspects of the event which not only tainted the positivity of a great day, but also birthed a slew of hostility and information on social media. It also disheartened my volunteers and then it ended up in the newspaper. So I'm here to clarify these statements for council, but more importantly for our tax-paying residents. As of August 29th, 2019, the money available for celebration of public events was $38,169,000, not $60,000 or $80,000 as previously claimed. Additionally, there was no money allocated separately for Town Day. We did not have $80,000 just for Town Day. That is misinformation. Part of my job as Director of Public Affairs is to stay on budget, and $38,000 was the number presented to me at 2 separate meetings I requested. Looking at that number and knowing Town Day runs roughly $21,000 to $22,000 every year, that did not leave much for future events, old and new ones, without depleting the line item number. After all, Washington Township is not Westwood. We neither have their population, nor do we have the amount of businesses that they do. Comparing us to them does a disservice to our small, homey community. In fact, the committee seeks sponsorships from businesses as far as 21 miles away. I wish we had Westwood's problem of turning down donations. The sponsorships we do receive do not cover all costs, but rather offsets the expenses in order to provide an affordable day. Town Day operates at a small loss. We do not make a profit, and we are very thankful for the sponsors who have so generously donated all these years. Additionally, I run events with the assumption that we may not get sponsors, and if we do, we may get very few. As an example, we were unable to obtain sponsorships for the summer concerts this year. Luckily, we did have funds available in the line item celebration of public events in order to still provide a free event to our residents. The volunteer committee members and I agreed, as had been done in previous years, to charge a nominal fee of $5 for inflatables, in addition to the standard $5 pony rides as seen at many festivals and events throughout the state of New Jersey. And to clarify why most events, including ours, charge for pony rides. Charging keeps the line manageable and does not strain the animals. A free pony ride would require more ponies, which increases the overall expense. As a result, we would have to cut into other areas to absorb the cost, and that would negatively impact the event. Many local festivals charge an entrance fee, which we do not. They also charge $5 per bounce to jump 4 to 7 minutes in simple bounce houses, much different from the elaborate obstacle course style inflatables. We, on the other hand, provide 5 hours of bouncing for $5. Face paintings range from $5 to $7. Ours is free. Airbrushing on the $3 caps, which sold out, was free. We also secure free giveaways from our vendors as part of the event. The Golden Seniors host the free fishbowl games, which parents probably wish we charged for in order to avoid coming home with 5 fish every year. The Women's Club offers free sand art. The petting zoo was also free. Frankly, my list can continue. The committee and I do not see this as disgraceful, nor do we feel embarrassed to charge these minimal fees. Rather, we pride ourselves on providing a tremendous day at an affordable price. Embarrassing would be requiring the townspeople to provide proof of their residency. While Town Day was originally established for our residents, it has evolved into an elaborate quality event attended not only by our residents, but by those of neighboring townships as well. Hence, the estimated 3,000 person attendance. So, Mr. DeSena and Council, I respectfully disagree with the comment, and I quote, "If we can't have one free event, then we shouldn't have Town Day." Canceling Town Day is not the solution. Rather, this comment discredits the efforts, time, and energy of my volunteers, who, by my calculations, invest an average of 20 hours of their time to meetings and the event, not including getting their post-meeting tasks accomplished. And for those of you who have run volunteer-based events, you know volunteers do not come knocking at your front door. We need to show gratitude for their dedication, and I would like to take this moment to thank my volunteers. As a reminder, we do have free events in Township, such as summer concerts and tree lighting. I am also in the process of adding more free events with the support of the mayor and the council to be discussed at budget time. To conclude, I encourage we open up dialogue and collaborate to find a solution to what was described as a disgrace for charging residents. I welcome opposing views because within this space is where growth takes place. Things were not done wrong, but everything can always be improved upon, and I welcome any member of council to join my team of volunteers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Susan Zaloom, 264 Beach Street. I have been a resident of this town for 40 years.
Greg Lloyd, 264 Beach Street, been a resident since 2016.
We've come because of a bamboo issue that has been creeping up, to use quotes, into our yard and our neighbor's yard.
It started about 4 years ago. Our neighbor behind us on Colonial, directly behind us, planted a large area in his backyard adjacent to our property on 264 Beach Street and planted a running bamboo. For those of you who are not familiar with running bamboo, this is what it looks like when it comes to your yard, okay? It travels about 6 inches below the ground, and every one of these spikes is an upward movement coming vertically into the yard, okay? So that's what's been happening for 4 years. We very graciously went to him and asked him to remove it, isolate it. Running bamboo, the only way you isolate it is you have to put a parameter completely around it. You cannot leave any open area.
It still gets under it.
6.
What?
It still gets under it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's suicide, all right? Most of the, well, not most, but I know that Hillsdale and Emerson have ordinances against planting it, cultivating it, and keeping it in your yard unless you have it isolated. I have copies of them. I would like to give them to you so you have
We
a
have
reference.
like I had emailed you back, we have a bamboo ordinance to review tonight in our
Oh,
packet already.
great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I responded to your
I didn't know who it was on the taxpayers. Thank
Yeah.
you.
so there is a bamboo ordinance on for review
Thank
tonight.
you.
So we'll, hopefully, if we get approval on the days tonight, in the
It
next
is
few
a
meetings.
serious concern, especially if you have young children in your backyards.
It
And the
hurts.
only way
No,
we've
no,
been-
what happens
Well,
is-
we've been controlling it through using Roundup.
You know, I don't want to
Which
be
is-
playing with that stuff.
We can't, you know.
You know what it is? It's when the spikes come up, they come out and they're 2 feet tall and they're spikes.
Yeah.
They're right to the point. God forbid one of the grandchildren comes by, trips, falls on it, case closed, you know, so. I mean, it's not only that, it's an annoyance. I am out
It
there.
grows a foot a day sometimes in the right
Yeah,
weather.
and,
It's
you know,
great.
we have, you know, part of our lawn disappeared because the bamboo was covering the sun and blocking it out. He since took it down, but it's not eradicated. It's still gonna come back, and it's always gonna come back until he does something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up?
Good evening, Anthony Conti, 490 Ridgewood Boulevard North. I just wanted to come in and give you the conclusion to my little sidewalk issue. As you know, it cost me $550, and I got my check back of the $444 and some change 2 days before a full year had passed. So we almost made a year, but we didn't quite make it. I asked the council to look into the matter. Mr. Calamari has looked into the matter, and what I was told was I was charged accordingly to what they have charged other residents. He had looked back on other zonings, and he talked to the building department, and they felt that it was fair and reasonable. Whatever. I don't think it was fair and reasonable. I think it was excessive because I had to pay an engineer to come in and do it. The question that I originally had was, why is it that I'm paying an engineer from outside the town when we have a zoning official that can very easily come by and see if I'm doing it according to zoning, so to speak? Why do I have to pay an outside engineer to do? I mean, it's a simple 50-foot walkway along my driveway. It's nothing. The other question I have is, you guys have businesses, don't you? Some of you have businesses. Has any customer ever come into you, gave you roundabout number, $20,000, said, hey, do this job for me, and whatever money's left over, give it back? That's pretty much what the town did to me. They took $1,000 from me, had an engineer of their choosing come in, charged me whatever the engineer felt he could charge me. And of course, he's done that to multiple people in town. If Mr. Calamari has said that it was reasonable and within $50 of what he's charged other people, then pay the engineer $114 to get the balance of my money back. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, I would love to have a business where someone gave me $50,000, I went in, did the job, and said, oh, it was $49,500. Here's $500 back, even if the job only cost me 20 grand. It's not fair. And why aren't we given an estimate of approximate cost of something like that? I mean, you can't just willy-nilly let an engineer choose the amount of money he's going to charge people. It's not fair to the town people. We pay taxes, we have a zoning official. Why can't a zoning official come in and say, yes, Mr. Conti, you're within zoning. Yes, Mr. Conti, you cleaned up the job. Why did I have to pay an outside engineer $555.75? No answers, right? No.
It's part of the administrative part of government. The council has no purview over that, you know, what the, you know.
Okay, so why am I paying a zoning official? Why do I have a zoning official in town?
to review zoning issues,
This was a zoning issue.
but it ended up becoming an engineering issue.
How?
I can't answer that. I don't have all your letters in front of me.
My neighbor didn't want the sidewalk, that's all it was. It
Again,
had
that's
nothing to
information
do
you
with
have.
zoning. No, but it had nothing to do with zoning. It was, you look at the book, I went to the town, I looked at it, I saw I could put this sidewalk in. Because my neighbor said, I don't want it, the zoning official from town could have come over and said, no, he's within his rights, here's the zoning, it's within his rights, it's not a problem. I don't understand the engineer. I guess nobody up there understands the engineer either. Just the way it is. So the town tax people pay taxes, have a zoning official, yet we still have to pay. Look, I get it. If we have to do something as an as-built, or we need to see elevations or heights, or if somebody built their house too high, or if it's too close to the street and he has to pull something, he has to.
But it happens, as the mayor stated, it happens all the time. My neighbor didn't like the height of my house, and it cost me another $900 because I had to have an elevation survey done.
By
Because somebody
whom?
complained.
By your own engineer?
I had to hire my own surveyor.
So you
to
were
come
able to shop that price, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. It was $750,
From the townspeople?
No. Well, and then I had to pay him to review it. So it's just the way it works.
Right, well, look, it's a simple sidewalk. It's a 50-foot sidewalk alongside my driveway. You've seen it.
I've seen it, yes, I have.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
There should be at least something in there saying sidewalks, $300, that he could charge you to say yes or no. I mean, some sort of pricing arrangement. I can't go into a customer's home and say, give me $10,000 and, I'll give you back what's ever left. It doesn't work like that. I know that's government, and I know government's ridiculous, but this is absurd.
Can I ask, is the escrow based on an estimate of what it will be?
No, it's a standard escrow.
Standard escrow. So regardless of,
Regardless of what the work is, that's what you have to post in order for it to get reviewed.
and then it's billed,
Whatever's,
it's
if you
billed,
run out, you owe him more money. If he does it under, you get money back.
okay.
And then $114 to tell me he cleaned it up and you could have your money back. $114 to drive by my house and see that it's clean. You know what? Give me 10 of those a day. I'll do it.
I'm sure you would.
Yeah.
Sounds like I would like to
Yeah.
do it too.
I
but,
mean,
Thank you, Mr. Conti.
All right.
Would anybody else like to come up and address the council at this time? Mr. Durso?
Hi, Joe Durso, 12 Viola Terrace. Two shout-outs. Council, I think you're doing a great job. You are making a lot of progress in this town. I see the roads were finally done by, actually the six of you, mayor and the council. I think you're all doing a great job. A lot of progress going on, which I like to see,
Thank you.
moving this town forward. Any update on my pet peeve project? Actually, Mayor Sopkowitz is here in the audience. We both worked on it together about the Garden State Parkway, exit 169.
Mrs. Shapezi is working on getting us a meeting with Mr. Roth. Mr. Roth and Mrs. Shapezi are working on getting us a meeting with the Turnpike Authority.
And that hasn't taken place yet.
Well, she's,
Okay, because, obviously it leads to, our corner of Pascack and Washington. It's, I came out of Connecticut down the Parkway, through the Thruway. Obviously, you can get off at Schoolhouse Road, or you can get off at the Service Center in Montvale
and illegally come through.
illegally.
Yeah.
And, it's just wrong. And then, again, I know this is a mayor and a council, former Mayor Sopkowitz, myself, a lot of volunteers worked on this. I will volunteer if you need volunteers. I have contacts in Montvale that are for it also. My next question. Last council meeting, there was a couple things brought up about properties. And this town is very small. A lot of rumors float around. I'm just going to come out and ask. The property, the swim club you talked about.
Yes.
There's a property on Pascack Road You know, I think the horse used to be on it next to
Yes.
the church down there. Is that property, and I'm sure you're probably going to tell me you can't discuss it, but I think it was something that somebody brought up that it was a closed session matter. Is that property in consideration for the town to purchase for anything? Like an additional field?
No, it's not
or
for an additional field.
a DPW yard?
I think if you go and review the tapes, you'll see that we had a presentation by Mr. Sarlo on situating a DMF there.
So my opinion, and this is just my opinion, why in God's sakes would you want to put the DPW on a nice part of Pascack Road? Why would anybody consider that when you have, if you're already approved, and thank you again for approving the firehouse and the ambulance, you're going to gain space out here.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
problem is we need to find a temporary home for the DMF while we remediate the property beneath.
Okay, so then that could be a possibility of a temporary spot.
No, well, if you're gonna make it temporary, we looked at making it permanent.
Okay. I mean,
That was the study that was done about 16 months ago by the architects.
would all of you up here think that's a good idea to put that, our DPW out in the open? I mean, Sherry Field, I get it, it's wetlands. I always said, perfect spot, near Westwood's border, away from Washington Township, you know, kind of
There's
like,
just not enough room in there, Mike, Joe, excuse me.
and there's enough room by
Joe,
the church?
while we're going through this, we're just considering all the options that are available to us right now.
Okay, well, I for one would think it's ugly. It's a beautiful part of Pascack Road, you know, it would be an eyesore on both sides of the, I think, what's that, Highland on the other side? What street is that? I'm sorry.
North Ridgewood.
North Ridgewood, you're right. You know, I mean, you have the church there, you have the synagogue across the street. I just don't think it would be a great spot, and I'm sure the neighbors wouldn't like that there, but my opinion.
We're checking all our, you know, prospects to relocate it, so that's.
Okay, and one last thing, is the police chief retiring soon?
Yes.
Because of, he's reached the age, right?
Correct.
And do you have a process of, you know, who determines who's going to be the next police chief? Is it the police director and anyone else? Who's on that board?
Free to discuss that, or?
Well, I think the code provides, I think, for the director, the equivalent of the mayor, if I recall correctly. But
I believe so.
I think that's what it is, off the top of my head.
So
I'm thinking the director with the,
he would give his input because he's a civilian, but he's our former police chief. So there's no board set up to review for, or is it preset who's going to be the police chief in this town?
It is not preset. There is a board of 3 people established because, for, let me say, obvious reasons to people who know me and my brother, he's on the force. And so I remove myself from as many police things as I can. So I set up a 3-person board and will abide by whatever they recommend.
Is it public record who's on the board?
I don't even.
No, I mean, can I
Well, if you want to.
say who it is?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, it's the director, it's the current chief, Chief Hooper, and Administrator Tovo.
Okay, so the director is our former police chief.
Correct.
Mr. Tovo, are you former law enforcement?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we have 3 former law enforcement, you know, people that they're going to decide, which, okay, I get, but, and so do you have a review process going on with
Mr.
anybody?
Durso, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I'm almost done. Do you have a review process, or is there 3, 4 names, or is it just already preset who's going to be the next police chief?
It is not preset.
Okay. And when you judge a new police chief, whoever that police chief might be, do you base it on his or her great work in this town, character, anything that the person was involved in, politics possibly, or anything else like that? Is that any consideration of, you know, character of a person?
Well, let me say, you know, Joe, with all due respect, politics has nothing to do with it, and I take
Right, it
offense to you
shouldn't.
even throwing that out.
Absolutely, politics should have nothing to do
Yes, and,
from
you know,
the police
I
in
don't
the
appreciate
town
you throwing
promoting who they want to
that
get
out
on
there,
board,
because-
get on as mayor or council or whatever else like that. So I wish that would be taken into consideration, so when you do pick that final choice. And also, one last thing, and I'm done. I'd like to also thank Mayor Sopwith. She was the one that put Town Day back on the map 8 years ago. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Matt.
10 years ago, Joe.
Would anybody else like to come up and address the council at this time? Mr. Werfel raised his hands before you, Mr. Getz.
Mike Werfel, 880 Crest Place. I have a question. When you were talking about Town Day last week, what was your expectation of how money was going to be spent?
This council made a decision through 4 budget meetings. It is on YouTube, and it is on the council. We had given the mayor, he sat at all those meetings, and he was told that we would not, we made an edict on this dais, all 5 of us said, no charge for Town Day. And that was it. We spent 4 or 5 meetings, and at every one of those meetings, Mr. Werfel, it was discussed, and we said, no charge to our residents for Town Day. How that changed is out of our control.
So,
And my comment was that I spent 4 Saturdays here discussing the money. Where the $45,000 has gone, we still do not know, because the last we knew, the $45,000 was there. So
Mike, you knew where it went. We spoke to Judy about it, so don't say that.
we still don't know where it went, Mr. Mayor.
Did you and I walk into Judy's office, and did she tell us where it
She
went?
does not have a clear, she does
Did
not
you and I
have.
walk into Judy's office, and did she tell us
Mr.
where it
Mayor,
went?
the money was moved, and we still don't know where it was moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved into the current account.
Or why?
Why, and where was it moved? That's what the question I asked. I asked, where was it moved? Yes, she said it was moved into the current account, and I said, to pay for what? And we spent 5 meetings, 4 or 5 meetings here, and we said that Town Day would be free. And that's how we left the budget.
All right,
So how
I'm
it
happy to
changed-
discuss this as long as you want, but...
I'm done discussing it.
We all got something on August 31st saying the amount in that account was down to $38,000. No one questioned it, but you make the statement there was 80 grand in the account at Town Day.
There was $80,000.
On Town Day?
There was $80,000 during the budget meetings in that account.
No.
I have the printout here, Mr. Mayor.
I do
will
too.
show it to you. I have the printout.
It says there was 60 as of the close of last year.
After the 45 got removed, because there was 108,000 in there before the 45 got removed. So I'm not gonna dispute numbers with you. I have the numbers here, just like you do. The decision was made by this council that Town Day would not be charged. And that's what I found disgraceful, that we spent 5 meetings.
And there was not 80,000.
It doesn't matter how much was there, Mr. Mayor. We made a decision as a council. We are the fiscal part of this government, and we said we were not going to charge the residents. Town Day was wonderful, Daisy. It was. I had a great time. I did not call it a disgrace. You could take my words and change them all you want. That's not what I said. I said it was a disgrace that I spent 25 hours here on a Saturday mornings out of my own time because I wanted to, and we made a decision, all 5 of us, unanimously, that it would be free. So I am sorry that wasn't relayed to you. So let's move on. Mr. Werfel, that's it.
okay, my only question was, out of the 38,000 that was hanging out, how much of that was spent on Town Day?
I don't think we've done a final reconciliation yet, but I would say it operated anywhere from a $3,000 to $5,000 loss.
So we spent between $3,000 to $5,000 of 38,000.
Correct.
What is the rest or the balance of that money allocated towards that we wouldn't have spent more?
To keep future Town Days affordable for people for a longer period of time.
So it's specifically just for Town Day?
Yes.
And how much is budgeted each year to get allocated into that account for Town Day?
When you say each year, this year it was nothing.
Okay. And what might have been the reason why nothing was allocated? Did it have something to do with what they thought the balance was at that time?
Well, again, I'm not going to sit here and go back and forth. That's
No,
not-
I'm
Mr.
just
Werfel,
asking.
The decision was made to charge when we asked for it not to be charged. That's
Okay,
it.
fair enough. Thank you.
Mr. Getz?
Can I just make a comment? I'd be happy to discuss how everything happened independently with the numbers, because I know them all. I've been on the council for 4 years. I can do it now, or I can do it in the conference agenda, and whatever you folks decide.
Well, we have it on,
Save it.
is it on, I think
Save
you
it
have it
for
on the conference
conference.
agenda,
Huh?
Mr.
Save it on the conference.
You have it
and
under
we
the
can all
conference.
I'll
discuss
do it on the
So-
conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Getz?
Thank you, Mr. President. Fred Getz, 587 Washington Avenue, Township of Washington. First, I just want to say thank you for everyone working with the county to finally get at least the worst portion of Washington Avenue paved.
You mean the one in front of your house, Mr. Getz?
Yes.
Just jealous. I want to clarify that.
Yes, all my neighbors, thank you. I'm sure I can speak for them on that subject too. It was getting pretty bad, so again, thank you for all your efforts. On that note, I also did want to see if there was a timeline where the lines would be painted, if the county had let you know that, because going through that intersection without any lines, I think people are a little confused, and I don't know if our traffic officer needs to take a look at it, maybe put some cones up temporarily or something, but people are crossing over what I think is supposed to be 2 lanes, and it looks like 1. So just might want to have the traffic officer go out there until, because the county is notorious for not giving you a timeline on anything. So on that same note as well, the handicap ramp was done in front of my house and the curbing and sidewalk installed. That also is taken a few years, so I appreciate that that was done. I was, however, under the understanding that the entire curb was to be done, and that was not the case. I just want to make the administration and the council aware. I know it's a county road. I'm going to probably go to a freeholder meeting too, but there is a serious drainage issue there because there is no curbing. My understanding is that somewhere 30, 40, 50 years ago, that area was a swamp, so the sidewalk and curbing sunk, and the county in its infinite wisdom just paved over the curbing and right up to the sidewalk. So what that does is all the water on Washington Avenue drains now onto my sidewalk and into my yard, so it can't get to the catch basin. I know Mr. Azzolina has been working with the county. I'm sure Mr. Tovo has been pleading the case as well, but I just want to make sure that it's followed up on, because now that an extended portion of that sidewalk was done, now it's draining all onto Monroe and filling up the sides there. There's nowhere for the water to go there too, so my driveway was rising up to 3 inches of water. It's going to eventually flood into my garage. So it's gotten a little worse. Again, I do appreciate the paving. I do appreciate the effort, but I would just ask that the administration can hopefully follow up with the county and keep pressing the issue that there is a hazard because there's a lot of commuters that walk past there too, and a few of them have actually come up to me and said, what were they thinking doing just that portion, because they have to walk out in the middle of Washington Avenue or on my lawn to be able to get past whenever it rains. And it gets even worse with the snow because there is no buffer, so all the snow is just plowed right onto the sidewalk, and that again pools and ice forms. So I appreciate anything you can do. Yeah, thank you.
Fred, Fred, if I understood you correctly, did the drainage get worse since they did?
Yeah.
Can you maybe take a couple pictures that we can
Sure.
show them also?
Sure, absolutely, and I'll
Thanks.
get them to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, Mr. Getz, I was out campaigning over the weekend, and I noticed that you did have some flooding issues there. And in regards to the striping of the street, all the reflectors that were put on after the paving, they're all on the side of Washington Avenue. How they came out of the road, I don't know, but they were there. But if you walk down the north side of Washington, across from your house, towards, what's that, Clinton, they're all along the sidewalk. So, again, I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry to hear that,
They
but-
should be up until
Okay.
it's striped, so.
All right, well, I'm sure everyone will follow up. Again, appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come up and address the council at this time?
Yeah, I would. Bob Stickle, 191 Walnut Street. For you, Mr. DeSena, to criticize a bunch of volunteers, okay? For 10 years, my company's donated between $250 and $500 as a sponsor, okay? If you don't like the way it's running, maybe you should volunteer.
Mr. Stickle, I will volunteer when I'm asked. I will do, you know me.
Well, you don't have to be asked. You don't have to be asked to
I-
volunteer, sir, you just have to show up in a meeting.
and
And
this-
for you to
and my
criticize,
comment- and my
excuse me, I'm talking, when I'm
Go
done
ahead, Mr.
talking, you
Go
can
ahead.
talk.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, I got my 5 minutes.
You do.
Okay? It's disgrace for you to say there's $80,000, because I sat on that committee years ago when I had more time, and there was never any money, okay, that the town gave. And if the $10 is too much for pony parties, I'll give you the $10 right now,
don't want
Mr.
your
DeSena.
$10, Mr. Stickle.
So I don't see why you, as a town council where no one's volunteering, should dictate how a volunteer group runs it. Maybe the volunteers will walk away and we won't have a town fair next year.
Mr.
And that'll
Stickle.
be on you.
Mr.
So the
Stickle.
only disgrace here, when I'm done talking, you
Go
can
ahead.
talk.
Go ahead.
The only disgrace here is you and the other council people who criticized it last week. And maybe you should do like they do in Wayne. Maybe you, Mr. Bruno, Mr. Ullman, can sponsor the pony parties next year and the kids can have them for free.
Thank you.
And put your money where your mouth is instead of using taxpayers' money.
I make one comment. I didn't discourage or disgrace anything, so don't use my name. You're done. Thank you. Your 5 minutes are up.
You're in charge now, or is the council president?
No, but he said your 5 minutes are up.
Okay? You criticized the committee last week. Go back and look at the tapes.
Yeah, you look at him.
Would anyone else like to come up and address the council at this time? Seeing no one, motion to close the meeting to the public?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'm sorry, who's second?
Mr.
Ullman,
Ullman.
second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ordinance number 19-23, an ordinance prohibiting parking on Rose Court within the Township of Washington. Resolution number 19-291, authorizing second reading and opening of public hearing for ordinance 19-23. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Any discussion on ordinance number 19-23?
None.
Nope.
No one? Motion to close the public hearing for ordinance 19-23.
So moved.
Second.
Who?
Mr. Ullman.
Mr.
A motion,
Ullman.
and I second it.
Roll call?
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Motion to adopt ordinance number 19-23 at second reading by title.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Introduction under first reading, ordinance number 19-24, an ordinance under Chapter 87 of the Code of the Township of Washington setting forth the rate of clothing allowance of officers and firefighters of the fire department in said municipality for the year 2019. Motion to introduce and pass ordinance number 19-24 at first reading by title.
So moved.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Resolution number 19-292, authorizing publication of ordinance number 19-24 and schedule a public hearing.
So moved.
Councilman Bruno? Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Ordinance number 19-25, an ordinance modifying procedure for the payment of bills in the Township of Washington. Motion to introduce and pass ordinance number 19-25 at first reading by title.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes.
I just had-
Yes, Mike.
I had a couple of questions on that.
Sure.
Is it, I'm sorry. There's a comment on the circulation. Prior to circulation of the list shall be reviewed by business administrator for any additions, deletions, and approvals. I guess my question is, I didn't see that in our original.
That was added by Mr. Poller, and so was the next sentence. The bill list shall be circulated to each member of the Township Council, the mayor, and the business administrator.
So I guess my question is, wouldn't these all have been reviewed prior to that list being created?
The answer answer is that it's a joint thing between the chief financial officer and the administrator. And as a matter of fact, that recommendation actually came from the chief financial officer to include that wording in there. I have part of the wording, and she amplified the wording a little bit, and I agree with it. Just make sure that the two people who actually do get involved with expenditure of funds are taking a look-see and are, if somebody forgot something, if somebody needs to add something, if somebody needs to do something with the list, they can coordinate together. So those are your two people, purchasing department head plus the chief financial officer. And this ordinance was sent to both the administrator and to the chief financial officer for any input, comments, and whatever. And this is the result, plus obviously what I put in, they looked at, and so that's where it's at.
So, again, so thank you for that clarification. This is a list of all bills, claims, vouchers scheduled for payment for review and approval by the Township Council. I guess I'm assuming that if it's on the list of all bills, claims, and vouchers scheduled for payment, that the CFO, the business administrator, purchasing, and whoever else, department heads, have reviewed those bills and put them together.
That's correct,
and
yeah.
submitted them.
Is your mic not, Ken?
That's correct, but the bottom line is that now they could do this payment without getting that list to you guys to take a look at. The bottom line is that they do the purchasing and they do the paying, and that's exactly what they do. And they all sign off, and they all do their job without coming to the council and saying, we'd like to pay these bills. But now we're generating another layer of creating a list. And so to make sure the list is accurate, and let's be honest, everybody questions, all sorts of expenditures and whatever, which is fine. So this is a double protection to make sure that the chief financial officer says, yep, these are all correct, and the administrator says it's all correct, but it may very well be something maybe it comes off the list because maybe they're not going ahead with the purchase. I don't know. Or it may be that there's something missing from a signature that somebody would pick up on. So, from my way of thinking, it's an extra protection to make sure that even though they've already gone through all of the machinations to get it paid, they're not creating this list, and this is making sure the two people who are involved say, yes, the list is accurate. So I don't see any problem with it.
Well, the only issue I see with that addition is that when are we going to determine that the list will be approved? Is there going to be a time limit on it? Because things have been known to be sitting on people's desks for a while before they get approved and reviewed. And if we want to pay things timely in the town, which we want to do, we've had a problem with that in the past, where bills weren't getting paid in an orderly fashion. I could see that getting hung up on someone's desk somewhere, lost in the pot. We've lost some things in this administration or other administrations that I've been involved with, and I just don't want that to happen with bills. And that's the only issue I see with the addition of that, Ken. And I understand that having an extra layer of protection, but maybe we should have a time limit on there. They have 48 hours, 72 hours to get that out to the council when we require it. That's my only issue with the addition of that.
I think we have to leave it up to Mrs. Curran to make sure we're able to receive it early enough to get the list, that's all. Bob and Judy have to get the list approved.
Do you foresee, Judy, do you foresee there being a problem getting the list in a timely fashion so people are getting
I actually
paid?
did address that to Mr. Pollard, and he said he didn't want to put any kind of time frame in it. And I said, well, within that, then I wanted to have the authority to enforce it. And I'd like to make a schedule where if I say you want to get something paid, you have to have these POs in my office
Okay.
ready to go for the bill list. You miss the bill list, you have to wait for the next month. And then
Okay.
I expect the bill list to be reviewed by the business administrator and myself within a certain time frame. And he said basically just get it done. I have to enforce the issue.
Okay. That's my only concern about that.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Just in the event of E1, an emergency judgment to pay, can the, even though it will be shown at the next council meeting, if the council could be just advised of that?
For an
Advised of
emergency one?
emergent.
Excuse me?
For the emergency one, you're saying if one happens,
Yes, so in case of emergency
Let
judgment,
you know.
so, I mean, payroll, recurring bills, telephone, those should be paid. They shouldn't be subject to the review, that's been agreed. And there is one instance where it's an unknown cost that's going to be approved by the business administrator or CFO, or CFO. And that's in the case of an emergency. But rather than waiting potentially 2 or 4 weeks to get notified of it, if we could be notified that there's an emergent situation that requires an emergent payment.
okay. Anything else, John?
No, not that I see at this point.
Resolution number 19-293, authorizing publication of ordinance number 19-25 and schedule a public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes,
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSantis?
Yes. Individual resolutions. Resolution 19-294, authorize submission of an emergency appropriation for the 2019 current budget for local matching grant to Open Space Trust Grant for Memorial Park Basketball Court Rehabilitation fiscal year 2015. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
I'll second it, but I'd like to discuss it before the vote.
Okay.
So what is the emergency here? So is this an emergency that's not an emergency, or is
Yes.
this an emergency that is an emergency?
No, it's actually called an emergency appropriation because since the matching grant was never budgeted for, I'm able to put the expenditure in this year, but I have to raise it in next year's budget. That's why it's called an emergency appropriation. So there's actually 2 forms of emergency appropriations.
And we're raising $21,000
Yes,
In next year's.
in next year's budget.
is next year's budget. And is there a particular, do we know why it wasn't raised in this year's budget?
I was not informed about the grant just until, I don't know, maybe about a month ago, a couple months ago, whatever.
So did we not, were we not aware we were going to take advantage of the grants?
That I'm not sure of. It was presented to me. I think it was Mr.
It's-
Aslin, I believe, right, filed on the grant.
It's more
Did you pick it
directed
up from
towards
someone, I
the
believe, right?
administration, Judy. I'm sorry, it's more directed towards the administration,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
since they would have planned for it.
Okay.
That's fair to say. Budget time and dealing with our former engineer, there was some uncertainty as to whether or not this project was actually going to go forward. There were concerns about the depth of it. Would there be more than just basketball courts? Would there be drainage or other reconstruction? By the time we had a true handle on whether we could do it or should do it and the affordability of it, the time to put in the budget had already passed.
And the 21K, is that our portion of a match? So do we have, is it 42 the total?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have to come up with the 42 to get the 21 back?
The 21.
it's 21 and they match 20.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, so you have to put the 21 out to get the 21.
Yes.
And we found the other 80?
Well, we have 13.5 on one and 13.5. We have some money in an ordinance
For the remainder of the
for the
balance from the
remainder.
bid.
But we might be short a little bit, maybe about $5,000.
And then we have some in this capital that will help to offset that.
Right.
I guess before we do a final vote, we've had this project on the books for like 2 years, okay? We've been talking about rehabilitating the basketball court, and I just find it interesting that now we have an emergency issue for this. That's my only concern. Is it because it was running out the timeline on the grant? Is that what it was?
I think definitely that's part of it. I think things have to be done, like, I think it was maybe November 1st or something like that.
Okay. But we knew.
Well, yeah, I
about-
think it's twofold.
But, yeah, but we knew about this for at least 2 budget meetings, easy, this project. And now it's an emergency appropriation. It should have been appropriated before. That's my only issue with it at this
Well,
point.
the emergency appropriation has to be done because of the fact that it was never planned. I mean, one grant goes back to 15 and 16.
Right.
So
That's-
if it wasn't planned from the beginning of the budget time,
Mhm.
you could only do it through an emergency appropriation.
And I understand that
Right.
point. I understand that point. But we're talking 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
Oh, I know, that's before my time.
5 years.
No, it's before my time.
I know it's before your time. It's not a reflection on anyone here on the dais or in the room. This is something that was on the mark. We've been talking about it since the rehab of the Memorial Field, which is a long time. And this was something that we were definitely gonna do. So I just, it's an emergent issue that didn't have to be an emergent issue. That's all. That's my only comment. Let's vote on it and put it to
Is
bed.
it sitting as a receivable?
I'm sorry?
Is it sitting as a grant receivable on the balance sheet
It
for
will
years?
once you pass the resolution. I set up a chapter 159.
So it'll go on the balance sheet as soon as we do the,
Right.
but let's, I'll make a motion.
It's already been
Yeah.
motion approved, we have to vote.
Yeah, let's vote on it.
You mentioned, and I don't know where the 80 comes up with, I would have thought it's 21 plus 13, or 34 that we would have to come up with, so what's the
The
80?
bid was 120,
The 125 was the bid.
the bid was 125,000 to do this project.
Okay, so 125K to do Memorial Field, and where's the second one?
Gardner.
Gardner, and it's both,
Basketball courts. And drainage work and some walkway work, right?
Correct.
so the work is 125 that's been bid out. And we have 34 that is going to be raised by grants or covered by grants in total?
42 that's gonna be covered by grants, right?
Well, it's 21 and 13.5, so what is
Oh,
that,
21,
34? About 34,000.
21 plus 13 is 34, less 125. So we have to come up with $91,000.
Right.
And you mentioned that there are open resolutions that we can tap into?
There's about 60,000 in a capital account. For one, I forget which ordinance is. There's an ordinance that's
Capital
earmarked for.
improvement or capital?
Well, it's a bond ordinance. It was earmarked for improvements to Memorial Field and Gardner.
It's a 17 capital.
Yeah, I think there's maybe about, I
Appropriation.
think there's,
Oh, you're talking about an old ordinance one?
yes.
Yeah,
mhm.
so if we didn't close that one out, we're gonna use it?
Well, we should use it because the
No, I
problem is.
agree, but that
yeah.
we earmarked all these ordinances, so you have that list, what we said we were gonna use it for.
Right, well, there's some money available in that, but the
Okay,
reason why we have
that's
to do
the
the chapter
unused stuff.
159 is
The
that you
fund
have to have a
unused.
spending mechanism set up, or you can't
Gotcha.
award the contract.
Okay.
And if we use that because it was earmarked for Memorial.
Yes.
Not Gardner.
Well, the ordinance says both. It says Memorial and Gardner.
Oh, it does?
It does.
Yes,
Good,
yes,
excellent.
All right.
yes.
And that money has been funded? We have borrowed that? Is it part of our band balance?
I would think it's part of the band balance that we're renewing permanent financing. I mean, I don't have it in front, but I think it would be. I think you did borrow under 17, that ordinance.
Yeah, it's leftover money that wasn't used, so
Yeah.
we either said we were gonna use it or put it back into capital. So I think we ended up putting maybe 100,
We left a
200
little
in
bit, we
capital.
left some of those open.
Yeah, we left some
you
of open
them
for
open.
these.
Open.
We put 100 back into capital, and the rest you said you were gonna use for whatever.
Other projects, right.
So this is one of them.
But we need the grant, otherwise can't do
Yeah,
it.
no, I
All
understand.
right, let's do it.
So
Okay. Let's get these courts done.
What's the matter?
Well, again, okay.
You okay?
Not balancing?
No, it balances. I mean, it's, I don't know if the grants, if there was an anticipation that the grants were going to cover this, once we contribute our matching, because it's double the price. So I don't know if the scope is increased. Are we looking to do more than was originally part of the grant proposal?
I think the drainage issue came up,
Yeah.
Mike, later on. That's what most of these funds are going for, is the drainage. I don't think we anticipated spending $125,000 on it, to be honest with you. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, the bid is weighted more for memorial work than gardener work, right, Mr. Tova?
That's correct, it is. I think that was part of the holdup with getting the grant done, was a reluctancy to do the drainage work. But in looking at it with Mr. Azzolino, it was very clear that if we didn't do it, the new court would wash out.
I think that's where the increase in cost comes. I think originally we thought it was gonna cover
Just the
half of
pavement,
it.
just the pavement on the courts, and now it's drainage work and new walkway, partial walkway reconstruction.
Okay.
All right. Roll call?
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Oman?
Yes.
Council President DeSenza?
Yes. Resolution number 19-295, authorize submission of an emergency appropriation for the 2019 current budget for the local matching grant to open space trust grant for Gardner Park improvements fiscal year 2016. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Well, any discussion?
We could have that whole discussion again if
Yeah,
you'd
no,
like.
Yeah, it's the same.
I just
Same
gotta
thing.
ask. Roll call?
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casio?
Yes.
Councilman Oman?
Yes.
Council President DeSenza?
Yes. Resolution consent agenda. All of the following items have been determined to have a unanimous consent of council and will be enacted in one motion. Should any item require independent consideration, any council member may have such item removed from the consent agenda. Resolution 19-288, authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with S&P Global Ratings for the purpose of credit rating services in connection with $7.25 million in general bonds of 2019. Resolution 19-296, authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Chaconis and Pettit LLC for the purpose of providing professional auditing services and the conduct of a special forensic audit not to exceed $10,000. Resolution 19-297, authorize submission of Chapter 159 budget amendment for Open Space Trust Fund for Memorial Park Basketball Court Rehabilitation fiscal year 2015. Resolution 19-298, authorize submission of Chapter 159 budget amendment for Open Space Trust Fund for Gardner Park improvements fiscal year 2016. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can we, I have just a question, I don't want to pull it, on
Sure.
288.
Yep, what's your question, Mike?
On page 1, the rating fee was $1,500. Other fees and expenses, have they been, I'm assuming the rating has been issued? And have we,
Yes.
are there other, what was the final bill?
I got the bill today, it was 15,000.
15 even? Okay.
I wanted to do pay to play just in case though, because we didn't know if it was gonna go over and we didn't wanna get into any problems.
Okay.
17.5.
And on 298, are we doing 1529? Yes.
Yes.
Just there's a small typo on it. The last full sentence, be it further resolved that the sum of, I don't know if that's 13,500 or 13,
Did it get cut off maybe?
no,
It's got two sets of zeros. It's got dot, dot, zero, zero,
Two
dot,
decimal
dot, zero,
sets.
zero. Okay. You're right. So I see it.
see, I actually read these things.
And am I allowed to make a comment about one of the resolutions?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, on 19296, I just wanted to let you know that Susan and I reviewed the budget, and the 10,000 was not a part of our original budget. That wasn't in the budget. I looked over the financial services account today. We only have about 8,000 in there because the QPA has been charged to that account because we had nowhere to charge the QPA. So I might have to do some transfers in order to accommodate that. Just wanted to let you know ahead of time. The 10,000 for resolution 19296.
No, that was budgeted, full amount, and it was in the budget meeting, and
But not as a separate line item, it's in financial services fee?
yes, it was in financial services, but it
Right.
was specifically budgeted for this.
Okay, well, I'm telling you right now, there's only about $8,000 left in that account.
So where'd the two go?
Well, I said the QPA is being charged there. I think we paid about $3,000 to Lumet for the whole bond meeting type of deal. So we may have to make some transfers into that
Okay.
account to cover that.
Okay, then we have to transfer.
I mean, just giving you a heads up, that's
All
all,
right, thank you.
okay?
Roll call.
Mike, may I ask a few questions about 296 before you vote on it?
296,
The-
yes.
Thank you. What process was taken by the council to find this firm?
Is this open for discussion, the voting, council's voting on this, we don't need to.
We've discussed it already.
Yeah,
We've discussed this already, Mr. Mayor.
Finished. Finished.
Okay.
We're voting on it.
All right, last I checked, Councilman Bruno does not run the meeting, Council President DeSena does. So what is the scope of what we're doing? Because it says in their letter that they're going to look at employee salary increases without a salary ordinance adopted by the council, and that the auditor has already commented on. So I'm not sure what the forensic accountant is going to be charged with finding further than the auditor's comments. And payment of older invoices not noted in the budget. The payment of the older invoices did not affect the budget at all. It was taken care of by either escrow accounts where we had already collected the money, but it just was not reconciled, which most of it is now. And the part that reflected town business, again, money was set aside, it was just not paid to the vendor. So I'm curious, why we're spending $10,000. What is the auditor charged with finding more than has already been found? Lastly is, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but someone with the same last name, Chaconis, happens to live about 4 houses away from Councilman Bruno. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or if that had to do with the placing of the business with this firm, but the council holds me to some pretty high standards, the administration, and so I think that, this has the potential of being not so ethical that someone with the same, I don't know if there is a relation or not, but someone with the same last name lives 4 houses away from Councilman Bruno, and just like it gives a bad appearance if Councilman Cumming or I vote on the police contract, I think this gives a very bad appearance that this was a single-sourced firm and a potential relative of the person who's going to be in charge of doing it happens to live 4 doors away. So I'd like the council to keep all that in mind before you take the vote.
Are you saying the firm is unethical? Are you accusing the CPA firm of being unethical?
I don't
Just
think
so
I said that.
understand?
I don't think I said
You
that.
said unethical. Okay, well, Cameron, I'm asking you.
I said
I'm asking-
potential.
Just so you know.
Potential.
Okay, Mike, you're running the meeting, so you're ready to vote.
Let's move on.
Can I
Thank
just say
you.
one thing? I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
know
go
you
ahead,
want to move
Mr.
on, but, so, I feel that a question raised about Mayor Calamari and Mr. Cumming, voting on or being involved in a police decision, and the perception of a conflict is, in my simple mind, very clear. One has a daughter on the force, one has a brother on the force. There's a direct correlation, familial relationship. Being a neighbor 4 doors down from someone, I don't have that same correlation. I will say I wasn't aware of it, but to correlate someone who lives 4 doors down that has the same last name, but we're not sure if it's that person, to voting on a police issue where your direct family member would be impacted by that vote, I think is a tremendous reach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
I'm glad my name isn't Smith, because you couldn't do anything.
Roll call.
Period.
Councilman Bruno?
Yes.
Councilman Casco?
Yes.
Councilman Ullman?
Yes.
Council President DeSena?
Yes. Few quick PSAs for October 21st, 2019. The satellite office and passport reach services was at the township on October 15th, 16th, and 17th. A total of 25 passports, 14 senior cards, and 4 notary oaths were issued. New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission was at the township on Wednesday, October 16th at the Bethany Community Center. Between license plate turn-ins, issuing handicap placards, renewing licenses and registrations, there were 75 customer transactions. The clerk's office is already working with both departments to confirm dates for next year's event. Halloween Cabbage Night curfew information. As per Chapter 184, curfew, no person under the age of 18 shall remain in or upon the public streets, highways, roads, parks, playgrounds, or other public grounds, public places, and public buildings between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. on October 30th and October 31st. Failure to leave after a warning by a township police officer shall constitute a violation of township ordinances and be subject to penalties. Fire siren will sound at 9 p.m. both nights. November general election information. Tuesday, October 29th is the last day to apply for a vote by mail ballot by mail. Saturday, November 2nd, the county clerk's office will be open to vote in person by mail-in ballot for the general election. Monday, November 4th, last day to apply at the county clerk's office in person for general election mail-in ballot. Tuesday, November 5th, general election, polls open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Property taxes. Township offices will be open on Election Day, Tuesday, November 5th, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and closed in observance of Veterans Day on Monday, November 11th. Quarter 4 taxes are due November 1st. However, the grace period is extended to Tuesday, November 12th, and for your convenience, the tax office will remain open until 6 p.m. on November 12th. Free rabies clinics will be held on Saturday, November 2nd at the DPW garage from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Dogs must be on leashes and cats in carriers. Retractable leashes are not allowed. Both dogs and cats are welcome at any time. Email notices. Residents are invited to sign up for the email notices by texting Township to 22828 and entering your email address. Last thing on the agenda, gentlemen, was WCTV. There's a handout from WCTV.
That can be discussed on conference.
All right, we'll wait for conference as, so motion to adjourn and go into conference.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
It'll take 5 minutes.
I can keep, you want
No, it doesn't matter. No. Usually
All right.
it'll take 5, but we'll go.
Mr. Tovo, the project tracker?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just go over those projects that need to be updated since our last meeting. 88 curb cuts on county roads, as previously discussed, that is currently underway. Right now, they're on Ridgewood Road. They will be returning to Washington Avenue. Driving down to renovation to DMF building. The meeting is scheduled for Wednesday or Thursday of this week with Boswell and some of their experts on the topic. Basketball courts, again discussed earlier, construction will begin shortly.
Mr. Tovo, the discussion you and I had this afternoon, can we look into extending the date for the due date to see if that'll alleviate some of the pressures the contractor's under?
I've already sent the email out.
Okay, thank you.
Your next page, paving of Washington Ave in Ridgewood, as everybody knows, a good portion of Washington was done. The remainder of Washington, along with Ridgewood Road, will be done in the spring of 2020.
What section's being done this week of Ridgewood?
No paving of Ridgewood now, they're
Just the
paving in the
corners.
spring. They're just doing curb cuts there now.
Okay. I thought there was a blast going out today that they were doing something on Ridgewood Road.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah, for the 88
for the
curb cuts.
88 curb
Oh, that's
cuts.
curb cuts?
Yeah.
Okay.
One lane, I think, was closed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the ADA curb
Okay.
cuts, yeah.
So the only paving for Washington and Pascack?
Washington,
Ridgewood
Washington and
Washington
Ridgewood.
and Ridgewood.
is going to be the
The emergency paving. we did
emergency
last week.
pavement that was done?
That is correct, the rest will be done in the spring.
And do we anticipate that all the required curb cuts and any other work will be done prior to the spring so we can get at the head of the line, or?
Yes, we discussed that with the contractor today, and advised him it had to be done now, not in the spring.
Okay.
Thank you.
That concludes the updates on this report.
Thank you.
Can I, just a couple of questions?
Sure, Mr. Owen.
The intersection, it seems like certain things are proceeding in terms of pole placements, doing it towards the end of this year into spring of 2020. I guess my only question is, there is, if I'm not mistaken, one piece of property that needs to be acquired to
Partial acquisition.
complete the plan, and where do we stand with that?
Anything that requires acquisition or movement of poles is being diligently worked on. The pole issue being the most pressing as of now. We're trying to get that squared away before we move on to anything else.
So,
Real timeline there with PSE&G.
so understanding that there's a timeline and that there's, 50 poles, I don't know how many poles are actually going to be relocated, but the property acquisition, if it's not done if an agreement can't be reached, the council or the town is going to be forced with a decision. So, to take that property, I would think, unless we're going to move the whole street over. So I guess my question is, it seems, and it's great we're pushing forward, I think we heard tonight that everyone wants that to occur. My question is, can it occur without that piece of property, however small it is, move forward without that acquisition occurring?
I'm not an engineer, so unfair to, my answer would be gray. It would be difficult.
So when Mr. Yarmick, was that?
Yakimic.
Yakimic, he was here, he was going to meet with the property owner. Is it possible to get a status specifically on this issue, if he's met with them, if there's been any discussions, and where he left off?
The property owner is represented by counsel right now, by an attorney, I'm sorry. So we are trying to work out a meeting through him.
Okay. All right.
Well, I think, here's the thing. One, the poles being moved does not hinge on the property being acquired. But I think the acquisition of the property should be at the top of the list right now, because that's just gonna push our whole project back. And I don't think people are gonna be very happy when they find out it's being held up because we can't come to an agreement on a piece of property. When Mr. Yakimic was here months ago, we told him that was a priority to get that going. I'd like an update on what his discussions were with the homeowner and their attorneys. And we need to really put that to the metal. We gotta get that going. Our residents are expecting it. So, put that to the top of the list, Mr. Tovo, please. Thank you.
The only other question I had, Mr. Tovo, was renovations to the firehouse. R.J. Conley resuming work on the project. I guess I was under the impression that there was money allocated to his work. Did he complete I think there were 4 or 5 phases of that initial 400K? Or did he stop because of the status of the funding with the council?
He did have a temporary stoppage due to the uncertainty of the passage of the ordinance, because to go any further would certainly have required additional monies, and his work would have been for naught if not approved.
So how far behind are we?
I don't believe we are.
And when do we anticipate breaking ground on this?
I spoke to Mr. Connolly today. I'll have more information from him by the end of the week.
And understanding the end of the week, did he give you any estimates of completion dates or where he's thinking?
I didn't specifically ask him that today.
Okay, is it possible when you do speak with him, if you could get a projection, and if he has to work with Boswell on when the work would start and when it would complete.
Yes.
And then can we also overlay the needs of the DMF and the deadline we're facing out there? And is it possible to get an extension on the remediation? And the reason I ask is, we seem to have a big issue with rehosting the DMF. And if the firehouse is complete in a timely manner, and we understand what that time is, and they move to their new facility, there's going to be an empty building. And I don't see why we couldn't use that empty building to temporarily host the DMF while we remediate out here. So, you know, it's a bit of a chess match, it's a bit of moving some pieces, but if we can get a delay on the remediation of the DMF and the town hall site, and we can get the firehouse built, we'll have a 4-bay garage for equipment. For the DMF, it could be done there.
I think
There's-
Mr. Pollard would have to ask Quest, because I think this is the extension, right? This, I believe this is the final extension, Mike. So we'd have to ask again for another.
Well, I think we should ask again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we should position it that, you know, this will save the town, even though we have to do it, it's gonna save the town a considerable amount of money, because we won't have to build a temporary facility, we won't have to acquire any land to do it, and we won't have to move the equipment out of town to host it. So even though it is a further delay, it allows us to pivot around our challenges and move it forward.
Thank you.
So, just one comment. When the gentleman made the presentation to us, I believe I had asked him if we went, you know, full steam ahead. He talked about shovel into the ground sometime next year, and I thought he said it was at least a year plus for completion. I could be wrong, but that's what I think we're looking at.
Okay.
Anything else, gentlemen, on the tracker?
No.
No, just on the renovations to DMF, so you met with Boswell, I guess, the week of. You didn't meet with him today, Mr. Tovo?
No, sir, we're meeting Wednesday or Thursday.
Just the week of, okay.
Anything else? Bamboo ordinance draft for review. In your packet tonight, Sue put together a bamboo ordinance, an ordinance adopting regulations for the planting, growing, what's that? Oh, Ken did, I'm sorry. Ken put it together, so it's got all his legalese in it already.
Well, it's basically Hillsdale's ordinance, it was
Which
given
is
to...
a pretty
yeah.
good, I think it's a pretty good
Yeah,
ordinance, as long as you're okay with it. So if I could have consensus to help our neighbors, you know, having had bamboo grow on my property, it is a nightmare to get rid of. It took me 3.5 months to get rid of it finally. And I was working on it diligently on a weekly basis, digging out the new sprouts that came up. So I feel for my fellow Beach Street neighbor about this subject.
Well, let me give you a little history about the ordinance here in town, or the lack of them. Because this came up a few years ago, correct, Ken?
Correct.
And we decided not to do anything with it at the time, because we felt it would open up a can of worms with other tree issues, I guess it was. Is that correct, Ken, what we talked about?
I remember it came up, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. I
No,
thought
I
it was
don't
more
either.
enforcement, but you know, I don't really, I can't say that I do remember. I
Yeah,
just remember it came up.
It came up and we said
And
we
it was
decided not to.
analyzed, but everybody decided to pass on it because there were some issues that came up. and
So,
didn't know what they
but
were.
that's the history here
Yeah.
that we had. We discussed it and we decided to let it, you know, die on the vine, so to speak.
Yeah.
At that time.
It could have been that there really wasn't any
Pressing
complaints.
need.
I think maybe there weren't any complaints at the time. In other words, it was one of those issues that somebody said, oh, let's do a bamboo ordinance, and everybody looked around and
I
they
gotta look
said,
back in the minutes and see
yeah,
what
it
it
could
was.
have been that there really weren't any problems, but now, obviously, at least have one,
Yeah.
maybe more.
There's many, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyway.
And
just
maybe
wanted-
people haven't come, to the meeting.
So, anyway, that's the history. I'll
So-
look at it.
So I probably would recuse myself from voting on this since I have an active bamboo issue on my property. I guess my question, though, would be, in A1, do we know, do these exist? Do these types of vessels? Because any drainage hole, the smallest crevice will be exploited by the bamboo. So, do we know, and our resident agronomist is not here, but, do they exist? So that's a question that I have. The second thing is, I don't know, can you just explain, Ken, and because maybe I just don't understand, but B, exceptions. So prior to the effective date of the ordinance adopting this section, any landowner, wait, what is it? This section shall not apply to any landowner who, prior to the effective date of adoption of this section, prior to the,
Has bamboo on any property.
shall not
Yeah,
apply.
in
Okay.
other words, somebody who has it on their property, this ordinance is not going to apply to.
Apply to them.
But then in the next sections, it says it will apply.
Well, it says it can't go onto public property or anybody else's property. So in other words, it's not,
You
it
have to
looks like
contain
it's not affecting you if you have bamboo on your property and it stays on your property.
But if it's coming off.
But if
then
it's
you're-
coming off your property, it doesn't apply.
So who makes the determination of who's the source of the bamboo?
Well, obviously, that was probably
that was one of the
that was one of the
things we
issues
talked about.
that
Yeah,
came up.
that was one of the
The
issues.
enforcement, I remember the enforcement.
Because we didn't know where it started and where it ended. That
Yeah,
was one of the
where it
things.
started, where it ended, who the expert would be, who would go out there. It just was kind of a punting situation. I have here.
So I guess, as we,
It's not the easiest, and that's probably why it wasn't enacted last time. It's not the easiest ordinance, problem to identify in terms of how to enforce it.
Well, if my neighbor has a jungle in his backyard.
Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah.
If he's got 50-foot high bamboo,
Right, yeah.
like I had one time.
And you saw,
And all of a sudden, my neighbor
Yeah.
behind me is saying, hey, Mike, your bamboo is coming on my property. It's my bamboo. If if my neighbor is, like the gentleman's, like if you pour Roundup on it, that's the only way to really kill it and chop the stuff out. But if it's coming, if you have a 50-foot grove of bamboo in your backyard, I mean, we know who the culprit is, right? I mean,
well,
it's,
let me put it this way. It would be like any other allegation that would have to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt in municipal court. In other words, if, like Mike says, somebody's got a forest of bamboo, and all of a sudden Mike sees shoots coming into his property, right, in the same line, and he takes pictures of it and notifies either police or files his own complaint, stuff like that, you'd go to court, and the judge would decide whether or not the bamboo was, whether that person was offending the ordinance. Again, this is not the easiest,
it's not cut and dry in any town when you look at it.
Exactly. I mean, I think this is just a vehicle to.
Get the code enforcement officer out there.
Yeah, exactly. And also probably to control something that, the more obvious issues. I mean, and to give some relief if there is this issue, like those people that came up at the public session.
and what is, where in section C, order of removal, what can that entail? Or, what do we anticipating, so in the case of this gentleman who, you know, is sitting in his backyard and watches the bamboo sprout up.
Can't be any, if you go to A2, it can't be any closer than 10 foot to the property line, Mike.
But I'm talking about the removing of it. So how, I guess, you know, gentleman X has an encroachment on his property that has come on to his property 15 feet. So he goes to court and says, I got 15 feet of bamboo. What is the court gonna say? And in order to remediate it, they're gonna have to be on his property. And who gets to elect the remediation plan, because you may use Roundup, but I may have kids and I don't want
Absolutely.
Roundup, you know. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, if we pass it, what's the potential impact?
So it says the cost of the corrective action, together with any civil penalties, legal fees, and other costs, shall be recoverable from the offending party. So does that mean you can get somebody to take it out for you, Ken, and your neighbor would have to pay for it?
Yeah, if it gets to that, yep. I think this is gonna be one of those ordinances that you're not gonna be able to answer the questions up front. It's gonna have to kind of play out, and if.
The judge will fix it.
Well, I think the town will experience how it's handled. In other words, if they start getting complaints that it's overreach and there's too much, there'll be complaints coming back to the council. Maybe it has to be, you know, revised somewhat.
We discussed it.
But this is exactly, I'm telling you, this is exactly why it wasn't enacted last time, was the amorphous nature of how to deal with this, you know, this problem.
Well, I mean, we had another resident who was displeased with the fees and other aspects of the zoning and the building process, so.
Yeah, well, that one is different. That one is pretty straightforward. It was a set fee, everybody pays it, and then the engineer is a professional and charges for the service, so that was kind of a,
This will be handled by code enforcement officer, right?
yeah.
Code enforcement business?
Well, let's see, yes, the code enforcement official, right, I put him in there.
Zoning or?
Code
No,
enforcement.
Code enforcement official.
On E-enforcement, the provisions of this section shall be enforceable by the police department, code enforcement official, as well as any other individual who observes a violation and wishes to file a complaint.
All right.
Employee handbook review, adoption processes, best practices. Mrs. Curran, you had some things you wanted to discuss with us?
With best practices, I did forward an email to the mayor and council.
Yep.
It's a little bit different this year, 84 questions, and 14 questions, they asked whether or not the council, or the township, would like to get some help from the state in certain areas. So I thought I would pass that to you and get your thoughts on that before I sent in the final answer to the best practices. I don't know if there's any, you know, thoughts on that, or comments, or...
Do you know what the help entails?
I think I did give you an email on that, I think.
Yes, you gave us an
Right.
email.
The list is, would you like any kind of help with redevelopment plans, master plan?
We
land
just
use
completed, so
ordinances?
master plan redevelopment, we just completed the master plan redevelopment, so we're kind of late on
I
that.
think to Mr. Ullman's question, though, there was no specific detail as to what the nature of the help would be.
Yeah, so like, if we hadn't done the master plan, if we said we want your help with it, come back in 2 months with a updated master plan, are they gonna do it for us? I mean,
I don't think that answer was given, right, Mr., that's what you're saying, Mr.
I
Tobin?
think
You
it's
said
a
it-
general, it's just like a general question, would you want help in the areas, like it says, like I'll read one, it says here, okay, let's see, here's one referring to, asset max says, Would your municipality like to receive additional technical assistance from?
Judy, can
the-
you pull the microphone
I'm
closer?
sorry, would your municipality would like to receive additional technical assistance from DLGS, New Local Assistance Bureau, in the area of capital improvements? So they're more or less like worded like that, would you like to have some assistance in those areas?
I mean, the only thing I could see, oh wait, that's procurement, not procedures. Okay, all right.
I mean, I don't have a problem with asking for extra help and then defining it, and if it works, it works, if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I could just make a suggestion, I mean, that's, you know.
I have no problem with it.
I mean, I think shared service, if we could get any additional guidance on expanding the scope of our shared services, I mean, the ones we have, I think work well. The administration does a good job in bringing them to the town, so, but if there are other opportunities, I think we should. That would be my only comment.
Anything else?
Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
You okay with it, Steve? You just gotta answer questions.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. You know, we'll answer them the best we can.
No, I was okay with everything. I think it's a no, and I agree with Mr. Ullman saying let's ask for help for shared service, see what they come back. Are you okay with that? Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tova, right, we asked for that one?
I think we can ask, but I think the state will be of limited assistance in many of those categories.
Absolutely, I
But
think, yeah.
There
I
might be
think they're
more.
unfunded mandate
Correct.
requests. That's exactly what they are. They're all unfunded. So they're gonna come back to us and say, well, we don't have any money, you know, any ability to help you, because they're, so,
It's my concern as well.
yep.
They could have someone sitting on the bench just waiting for us to ask, though. So if you don't ask, you don't find out.
Gotta ask.
Well, I have to say, I did ask a few of my colleagues, and surprising, a lot of towns are saying, they're answering yes.
To all of them, just to see what.
Not all, but I mean, you know, some pick and choosing and whatever, you know. I guess see what's out there. Then, when answering the questions, I just wanted to, there's one question that refers to the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it just refers to, in terms of it says compensated leave time in lieu of cash payments is considered a form of overtime pay unless such leave is utilized in the same pay period. So this actually means that if, certain employees are considered exempt, so they don't get overtime. But if they work a certain amount of hours, they may get what they call compensation time, but that would have to be taken within that pay period that it was actually earned.
So if you did 4 hours in this pay period, you can't, it's gotta be
It shouldn't
taken.
be able to be carried over, so I just thought I would mention that to you. The other thing is, it
So you're
is,
saying it would not be able to be carried over?
right, if you
We
go. in-
carry it over now?
Oh, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying if someone was to
Oh.
say to you that, you know, I'm getting compensation time, it's gotta be taken within a certain period, it wouldn't be able to be carried over, you know.
Yeah, you can't group it all together and say, hey, I'm gonna take 2 weeks off now, because I
Right,
worked.
exactly, or carry it over to the next year.
You
or
can't
anything
bank
like
it
that.
for like,
Right, right.
Do we have a policy on that?
I don't think we do, I don't know, that's what we do in the employee handbook, so I don't know if we should.
Well, actually, the current handbook does not allow for comp time whatsoever. The police have a separate policy for comp time because they can carry time over and they can bank their comp time. We have other policies we're developing and they will be coming out that address this issue.
okay.
Then one question they had was, does the municipality maintain centralized records for all time worked and all employee leave time earned and used? I don't really know, I think the bookkeeping exists where, and I could be wrong, it's in administration, but I don't know how formal it is, I don't know if, I think it's very informal from what I understand, but,
So it's something we have to,
Well, it's informal in the sense it's not yet computerized.
right,
So with the new tracking software, it will be.
it will be, okay.
Doesn't your payroll system track that?
No,
So if someone works 32 hours and says, I want 8 hours sick, or they call in sick, we don't pay 32 regular, 8 sick?
well, you get paid a sick day, so it's
No,
just.
but do you put it in the payroll system as 32 regular plus 8 sick, so you get a total of 40?
No, I believe it just, you
You
just
don't.
get paid straight time, and I think at administration, they keep track of sick days, right? I believe that's how it's done,
We do.
right, yeah.
So that means personal days, sick days, vacation days is not tracked in the payroll system?
No. It's done manually.
Can it be tracked? What is ADP, isn't it?
No.
Oh,
No, we use ADS. We use
never heard of
ADS.
it. But, okay, so do we know whether or not you can track it in the system? So if someone does submit their sheet and says, I had 32 hours regular and I was sick on Friday, that it says 32 regular, 8 sick
I
Friday?
think that would be a good thing to find out, if we could have coded that way.
It should, I mean,
You know,
payroll
You
system.
should have it.
Yeah.
It should be,
You know.
it should be.
You should have holiday sick, it shouldn't be manual, it should be right in the system,
Yeah.
period. I mean, that's a system payroll. So you should check on that.
Documentation should be as specific as possible.
So, Mr. Tovo, you mentioned the new, was it SDL that we're expanding?
Yes.
That has a component of payroll, or there's a component of what aspect where this would be kept?
It's not payroll, but it's tracking at benefit time.
Okay.
So who would maintain, I have one of those in my company, it's called HR Web, and it's only as good as if it's maintained, and generally, anybody who's gonna call in sick or take a vacation or have a personal day, you know, they put it into the system and it requests, and then it goes up to the first level manager. So let's say you, for argument's sake, you know, and it would go to you and you would approve it or not, and then that gets logged into the system. Is that what we're looking at?
It is, except we'll take the manual component out of it, it'll be done electronically. And that way,
Yeah, I
employees
mean,
should
they'll
be-
put it in the computer and say, you know, Bob Bruno wants to took a sick day on Friday, and then it goes to you, it goes in the system, and then it shows how many sick days I would have, personal days, vacation days.
That's how,
Taken.
exactly how I envision it working.
But, okay.
I haven't seen the exact
I get it.
module yet.
I want to envision it too, but is that what we're buying?
That is
To
part
my
of what we're buying.
question. Okay.
Then I would think that if you're going to code the payroll that way, the payroll person would have to receive some type of timesheet to be able to enter a sick day pay, a holiday pay, or,
Well, they would become a second level manager, so we
something
go the
like that,
first one that
right.
gets approved, and then it goes to second level, not a manager, but, and then they approve the payroll.
yes.
It has to all go through payroll. Approved first.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Curran?
I think that's about it.
Mike, you wanted to discuss Director of Finance?
Yeah, so currently, we don't have a director of finance. I know the prior administration either looked or didn't look, and there wasn't one. I don't believe there's been a director since Mrs. Doe passed away a number of years ago. I don't know how many years that is. And I guess my question is, we have certain directors that are, by being appointed into a position, become the de facto director, or it's the other way around. Those, I think the two that I'm referring to are the attorney who, when the attorney is appointed, becomes the director of law. The other is the administration. So when the business administrator is appointed, they become the director of the admin. And I guess my question is, those are codified in our code. Is that something that we would like to do? And is it something that we can do? And when I say we can, if we were to pass an ordinance, are we allowed to create a appointment similar to both the Department of Law and Department of Administration?
I've looked into it for a long time, Michael, and I believe you can do it. But it has to be by ordinance, you'd have to change the charter. Or not the charter, the ordinance. You can simply pass an ordinance to that to happen. You know, is there a desire to do so? That's the question. I mean, if we had a director, I wouldn't have a problem not doing it, but we don't have a director. So this would alleviate a problem, you know, in the future. Whoever gets hired as that particular, in that particular position, you already have it built in.
Okay.
So,
So, Mr. Pollard, the question is can Can the Department Director of Finance be appointed the same way you and Mr. Tovo are appointed?
That
The CFO would become would be, like the way, I'm being very liberal with my wording, but it says, whoever is the township attorney shall be the director of law. Whoever is the township administrator shall be the director of administration.
In the instance, I have to look this up, okay, so I don't need to get into a huge dialogue about it, but the way we have the CFO set up, I believe, is the CFO gets appointed by the council. I think I know the council has a say in the appointment of the CFO. I have to check how the CFO is appointed to see whether it's the same as the director. Ultimately, the director cannot be a straight council appointment. That's basically a mayoral appointment.
It wouldn't be a council appointment, it would be by charter, and it wouldn't.
No, but it's still an appointment by the mayor, subject to the advice and consent of the council. That's the way Faulkner is.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true, but if the ordinance reads that way, okay, what we're doing is combining the two.
I know, I just said I have to see because.
Yes, to research it.
You can research it.
My thought process was I'm trying to remember if the CFO gets appointed by the council as opposed to the mayor with the advice and consent of the council. That's what I have to look at. So I just need to look at it. I just need to look at it. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying.
Something you can get back to us on.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it, yeah.
So, Mr. Ullman, your intent is to make that director the same as the other two if it's possible?
If it is possible within our organization or our charter, I would propose that we do that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that? Under financials, interlocal Paramus street sweeping follow-up with Paramus.
I did that one.
Yes.
I know, Councilman Ullman had a question when it was brought up at the last meeting, so I did reach out to the clerk in Paramus to say, is it the one, because it was specific in that one line that it was, one-time sweep, and she just got back to me today saying, no, it is what we've talked about, but, just to have it in print, it's $4,500 per sweep. So if you're willing to still go forward, my suggestion would just be is get that page changed so it doesn't say one-time sweep.
Okay.
Make it in each.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Bruno, reconciliation of all monies from sponsors, food, rides, at all monies paid for Town Day.
Okay, so my only intention here is once again to try to explain what I think happened in this celebration of public events. First, the public events line item and the activity includes Town Day, Christmas tree lighting, fall festivals, summer concerts. It includes public events, just so we know, to be clear about that. At the beginning of 2018, there was $88,000, $88,567 as a beginning balance. There was an entry made for $45,000 that reduced the 88 to bring us to a balance of 43. The $45,000 was taken out and put into anticipated revenues. I don't know why, but when I asked Judy the question many council meetings ago, I asked if we can reverse it, and the answer was no. Once you put it in there, you've now depleted your fund. So $45,000 came out, went into anticipated revenues, which technically flowed into surplus. So I don't think it was used for any other current fund expenses. That's my, I think I'm right on that, Judy. But, so going to the end of the year, when we did our budget, we started with a balance of $60,116. If the $45,000 was still in there, we would have had $115,116. That would have been our beginning balance at January 1/19. During the budget process, the intent was not to tax the taxpayer again, but to deplete the fund until it's gone for whatever, Town Day events, obviously. And then, when we needed money, we would refund it through our taxes. In the past few years, we've been charging $28,000 a year to the residents, which they technically get taxed on, but it was not used against this reserve. We used it in current fund and let this sit. So the idea with this was to basically deplete it until it got to zero, and then start funding on current fund again, if what we wanted to do when we do our budget. So the end result is, there's still $45,000 that was taken out. I don't know why. It technically fell into surplus. So had we had a 30,000 number, whatever number you want to speak at, we're still missing 45,000 from this fund that should have been there, that should have been able for us to use for whatever events we wanted. So that's the reconciliation, the numbers. The town day itself, if I go through it and do round numbers, it cost about $22,000. The revenues we received, I would say, were probably 5 to 7 to 8, give or take. So net, it's somewhere around $17,000 is the net cost. And those revenues do not include any fees that we would charge any residents. It's just sponsor money. So $22,000 less sponsor money, you're talking about a $17,000, $18,000 event for Town Day. And there were other events in here which I didn't reconcile each event. So going forward, obviously, when we look at our budget, we'll see what the balance is, and we should look at each fund or each event and see what we want to fund, see what the sponsor money is, and then see what we're going to tax the taxpayer and fund, whether we fund it or not. But there is going to be a balance of, I mean, right now it's 29,000. And, it's not a question of, I don't want to deplete it. The idea is deplete it, use the money. So that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully it's clear. If anybody's listening and have any other questions out there, let me know. Any questions here?
No.
Thank you.
Community Development Block Grant follow-up to the letter. When is this block grant is due? December 5th is our grant?
December 6th.
December 6th, excuse me.
Correct.
Is that grant writer reviewing options for what we could use this for, Mr.
We
Tobin?
spoke as recently as today. We'll be meeting again tomorrow. Just keep in mind that we have very limited options when it comes to this particular kind of grant. So my focus is on our last remaining field that does not have ADA compliant parking stalls. And that was walked with our current engineer, so we have an idea what would need to be done there.
Would this be done at Cherry?
Yes.
Did he review that the lower and the two entrances should have a ADA spot versus,
We
or
did.
just a central one by the
We
snack
reviewed,
stand?
we reviewed both options.
Okay, thank you.
You say that there's limited uses for what particular uses, Mr. Tovo?
Well, I mean, we have limited opportunity because we're not of a low income level that would allow us to spend the money on other projects.
Okay.
The bulk of money that we're eligible for is from the open space, not from the block grant.
Okay. Thank you.
Judy, a quick presentation on the bond sale on 10/17.
Okay, we had a very successful bond sale, got a rate of 1.81. Which was really great. When we first looked at it in May, it was about 2.2, then they came in at about 2 when they had the presentation with.
So it's a lot less.
So it's 1.81, and the great part about that is that we received a fantastic premium, over $500,000. And for finance guys, I don't know, but what happens is basically, we were borrowing 7.25. So a part of that was to permanently finance the bands at 5.63, and then when new money was 1,620,000. So given the fact that we had that premium, we were able to apply that. So we're only actually paying back $6,785,000 as opposed to the $7,250,000.
Awesome.
So,
I'm sorry, just go back a little bit slower.
okay, and because of the premium,
Yeah.
we borrowed $7,250,000. We're getting that money, but we're only paying back $6,785,000 because of the high premium that we received.
So what's the difference? What's that spread? What does that mean?
$465,000.
Yeah, but what does that represent?
That's the premium that we received, that they're paying us.
Oh.
So we're able to get that amount, 7.250, and they're only paying back 6,785.
$6,785,000
what we're paying back, but we're
Right.
actually taking in
And
$7,250,000.
what rate?
The rate was 1.81,
That's a great rate,
great rate, and we got a
because he thought we were
fantastic
going to be in the
premium.
twos and
It
with
was
a higher premium.
2.2 and then 2, and then, yeah, and we got a premium of $465,000,
Wow,
It's $500 million.
so.
yep,
It's
huge.
$500 million.
The,
It's a big burden coming off our residents for the
big
future.
diffs-
Dog park.
the,
Can I just ask one other thing? The 7,250 again? Was the 6 million bands plus?
Was $5,630,000 in bands, and then new borrowing of $1,620,000.
And what's the 1,620,000?
New borrowing that we have.
Yeah, what was that?
Well, that was
For
for
this
future
year?
projects this year, and
Okay,
then we might
okay,
maybe
all
do
right.
bands
So
next year, whatever we were
There's
doing.
no firehouse in there or anything yet, obviously?
No, because we were doing
No.
the combination, right.
Okay.
can we ask, I don't recall the woman's name who presented, but
Sherry Tracy?
she had a very good schedule that had the options that were available to us, and we decided on the option, and it had repayment schedules, and there were assumptions on rates, and now that we have a hard rate, is it possible for them to update that and recirculate it to us?
Actually, with this new issue, we actually have all the results, and we have all the payback schedule, what it's gonna cost us for year to year, the amount of the interest,
Can we get
everything.
that disseminated to the
Want that
guys?
to the
Yeah, it's
council?
10 years? How many years?
10 years,
10.
10 years.
So I think I guess the reason I'm asking for that schedule in particular is it recapped the bands and the new funding, and it also had a projection for the firehouse and projected needs. So if we can keep that current,
Okay,
if there's currency to that, it will allow, I believe, the council, whoever's sitting here, when we move forward, to make an informed decision. I mean, at least to me, is a very easy to read, simple schedule, and,
well, we'll take her former schedule and compare it to what we actually have, the results, and then I think that would be a good way to
I think it
go.
was an Excel spreadsheet, so it's just a matter of changing the percentage of the bond and the premium back, Judy, and then it'll pretty much calculate everything. Because she had done 2 or 3 iterations at
Yes.
different rates. So I guess if we could if we plug the 1.81 in there and then plug the actual number we're paying
See
back.
what it comes to.
Yeah, please. Anything else, gentlemen, on the bond sale?
That's a great news.
Yeah.
That's good news.
I just have one comment on bonds and going forward. So our debt schedule was, I guess, a couple of years ago, I think it was running about $844,000. This year, I think we ended up at 440, because that's what was left.
Yes,
So when we were running at $844,000, we knew what the money was needed to raise to fund all this debt. Now, I know that Lou did a schedule also when we built in the firehouse and other projects. I think the goal was to somehow have an annual amount of about 1.1 million. So it'll be technically 350 more, give or take, of what we were used to paying the town.
yes.
And the 350 increase is, I mean, it's an increase, but it levels out. So I think we also need to revisit that whole section as to how many years we wanted to do it, so we keep a level payment through the next 10, 20 years. That's what the goal was also, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, just to give you an example, the first year payback is $750. So it keeps on going down, but they were higher. But
For
because we
this.
had that premium, we were able
Right.
to reduce those principal payments.
Okay, but now we'll have to build in the firehouse and everything else.
Yes,
Okay, okay, good. Thank you.
Update on central cashier. Are we moving forward?
We are moving forward with that. We've had discussions. I thought it was a good idea to start the tax portion, maybe in January, because we have taxes coming now in the end of the year.
Okay.
I inputted all the codes, all the revenues. I'm starting the training process. We were going to use the last 2 weeks in October just as a trial period. I wanted to actually start it up and going for November 1st. And I did mention this to the tax collector, and I think she wanted to talk to Mr. Towa about maybe postponing it a little bit. I don't know if she talked to you about that at all? I don't know if she did or
She
not.
did. I think there's got to be further discussion on
Yeah, so,
date of implementation, but we can discuss it tomorrow.
so.
So it looks like November 1st, we'll have central cashier.
Well,
Well, I
that's
think we
my
have to work
plan,
out a couple of kinks and make
Yeah.
sure
We're ready.
everybody's on the same page, but yeah, we're clearly moving in the right direction.
Okay, great.
What date did you say, Mike? November 1st.
Well, Judy's original date was November 1st, but it maybe get delayed a little bit because of tax season, she was saying. Mr. Ullman, you had Veterans Day ceremony, traffic on Pascack Road.
Well, someone has a very good memory, Sue.
That's
So
right.
this was just, I guess, at last year's Veterans Day ceremony, unlike, when do we have the parade? Memorial Day?
Memorial.
You know, it's completely closed, Pascack Ave. The Pascack Road is completely open, and there's a great deal of traffic that goes by, and it's a real distraction, and, you know, really these gentlemen should be recognized in a more serene setting, I guess. And I had reached out, and the chief indicated that they couldn't close Pascack Road because it's a county road and the effort involved with that. But he did mention they could put a squad car at each sort of, I guess, end of the road, not the road, the entrance with their lights on to slow the traffic and potentially create a more quiet environment or a more respectful environment. So I don't know if he plans on doing that. I mean, I haven't raised it since then, so I don't know if that was in his plans.
I haven't heard that.
No. So if it's something we could address with him, you know, he thought that might be a good solution. If they have their lights on, the cars will be forced to slow down, and it would be a little more serene.
And after this year, could be next year, now that the project is done at the library by a scout who created kind of a memorial there, we may think about moving the ceremony there. We just couldn't do it this year because we didn't know his time frame for sure if he'd have it done in time. But next year, we'll think about moving it. That way, it's off the main road.
I think that would be great, especially to recognize, was
Right.
Mr. Stickles' son?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Sue, zoning board appointments, 2 regular, 1 alternate member, term expires 12/31/2019.
I just wanted to let you people know ahead of time that, you know, we do have some appointments coming up in council. I know depending on the election what happens, but I also know last year you wanted me to make sure I got to each of those people to make sure they were still interested. So just want a little guidance from this council to let me know what you want me to do, if you wanted to go that direction or how you wanted to handle this.
Why don't we wait till after November,
That's fine.
and then we can make a decision then? Everybody okay with that?
well, can we at least start asking the,
Yeah, I guess we could ask,
Ask them.
yeah, can we ask the existing 3 people that are up for,
If they're interested in
Yeah.
return?
Yeah.
yes, that's all.
and just because this was an issue at a prior election where there was an appointment prior to the new
Correct.
government sitting, that no appointments can be made until the new council is seated.
Correct. So that's why I said let's wait till after November then to take care of this. But we just gotta
You
keep in
still-
mind
you can
that
still ask.
they expire on 12/31, so we just don't wanna end up with vacant seats there, so.
Right, well, I will reach out to all 3 and see if they're interested just for beginning.
All right, WCTV, Teleview Hypercaster server, playback schedule, gentlemen, on the dais. There was a schedule that WCTV put together in a memo format. Yep, so they have the server up and running. It allows us to schedule programming for broadcasts at specific dates and times. They suggested the following schedule: Monday or the day of the meeting, we rebroadcast, live like we did tonight, and we would start rebroadcasting again at 11 p.m. On Tuesday, they would broadcast at 6, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10 p.m. On Wednesday, 8 a.m., 12 noon, 4 p.m., 8 p.m., and 12 midnight. And Monday of the following week, 6, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., and Tuesday, 8 a.m., 12 noon, 4 p.m., 8 p.m., 12 midnight. you know, again, these are just set times, so it's, not- you know, so people would know when to tune in. Ricky had said he could put at the bottom banner that, you know, the meeting will be shown again at the following time, so people could just tune in at the time. And as always, they could always go on YouTube and watch it on YouTube. So it just gives them a little more freedom to show the meetings at set times instead of just looping it forever and taking up time.
I mean, I'm fine with it as long as, I mean, that's a lot of replays, so.
Well, right now, it just loops, you know, continuously, so.
As long as it doesn't preempt any meaningful work that they're doing?
I think they would just put it, you know, just move it accordingly if it
Okay,
preempts something.
yeah, so whatever is convenient for them, I'm fine with.
All right. Everybody's okay with it, gentlemen?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
And to his point, they're still going to be available on YouTube.
And they're still gonna be available as soon as, you know, as soon as it gets posted on YouTube, they'll still be available.
It must be really bored to be watching this stuff.
Especially when you walk out of an office and come back and the same person's on even matter what time.
Mr. Bruno, you had,
Maybe it'll be on the new Disney Channel or something, you know?
food drive, Mr. Bruno? You wanted to discuss the food drive?
Yeah, I mentioned this, I think, a couple of years ago. You know, the holiday season's coming up, and, you know, my question is there something we can do for, you know, when you walk out of the supermarkets, they put food in bags. Is there something we can do here? If there's any people in town that potentially could use a hand in food with the holidays, and just throwing it out there. Don't know the answer, but, you know, if we can do it and then have, you know, people could pick up privately at certain times, I don't know.
I would think there's enough charitable organizations that do that already.
I know the Knights of Columbus picks
That's-
up, right?
Yeah, we do a couple
And
of times
St.
a year.
Andrews has
and-
the food pantry.
Yeah, and there's one in Hillsdale that the Knights drops off too. So I think there's enough charities to cover it, but
Mr. Bruno, best practices?
Well, Judy was mentioning tonight that there are more questions. When do we take a peek at that, best practices and the answers and what we get
Well,
ready?
I could complete, the
Well, we
only
have to,
questions I have left are the ones, if you want to help from the government, all the rest is done. Mr. Tova did his part, I did my part.
and when do we supposed to submit it? Because we usually get it like
I have to submit it electronically by October 30th, but I can send you a copy if you'd like to see it.
October
I'd like to
30?
put it on the agenda next, in November, for you just to approve.
you have to submit by October 30th, signed,
Yeah,
sealed, and delivered?
we're allowed to submit before approval because they were so late at rolling it out.
And
Can you
what if-
change it?
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
Can you change it after it's submitted?
No,
No.
no.
so can you get it to us ASAP?
Sure, I'll complete the questions.
We have to approve that, don't we, the council?
Well, it's more or less like an acceptance, like with a resolution, because
Okay.
basically it's being done after the fact
So we'll have it for the first meeting in November.
in
what?
November.
That's
But I'll
fine.
send you a copy ahead of time to review.
Okay.
Yeah,
you'd
that's what I'm asking.
That's the one with the points that we have. to
Yes.
do,
Yeah, the
right?
points,
yes.
And what is our percentage, what was it last year? Do you remember where we were, point-wise?
I think we're at 87%.
I'm not sure what it was.
87? Okay, I mean, that's pretty good.
But already the questions that we answered so far, I don't think we're gonna have a problem. I think we're
They're pretty well, a lot of them don't change over the years, and we've already corrected numerous ones
Yep.
over the last I mean, we
A lot of
corrected
them
a
don't
lot.
change, but a lot of them changed this year.
Did they change? Did they
A lot.
change just in the wording, or did it change?
No, actual questions.
Actual questions?
Actual questions. I mean, a few were the same, but
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Bruno, organizational chart, job responsibilities, each employee.
Yeah, I mean, back when, there were some changes that were being made in terms of who actually was handling taxes and finances and payables and et cetera. And I think Mr. Holman had asked for an organizational chart. I don't know if it was ever prepared and delivered, so I just wanted to understand basically now at this point, who's in the office and who's doing what? Do we have that?
Well, one of the questions, the organizational chart was handed out during our budget season, and the job responsibilities and descriptions, something that's being worked on hand in hand with the new personnel policy manual.
And is the personnel policy manual gonna be reviewed by, I know the former administrator had a problem because Mel didn't review it, right? So is that gonna be reviewed by Mel, so we're in conformance?
These
Right,
policies
Ken, that
are-
became a big problem last time, right? When we tried to change stuff in the personnel manual and Mel didn't review it?
I know that they have some input on certain,
Correct.
not every,
Not every, but they
no,
have
not
to
every-
review, but they had to,
Some of the things that
they have to bless parts of it. I remember because there was issues there and we had to rectify those issues immediately when I got put on council.
I can tell the policies that Mel would have input in are written with Mel guidelines,
Okay.
but we can still send them to them for review.
Okay, I just remember that was an issue, because something got changed and it didn't meet the requirements of Mel, and we had to re-adopt it because to make it meet those requirements, that's all.
Just, working off of the job responsibilities, will everyone be reviewed this year? Will all staff have a performance review done?
Everyone has been.
When did the cycle end? Do you know?
When was it, July? End of July?
Yeah, it could've been like September 1st it was due, right, or something, I think you had?
At the latest. I think it was sooner than that.
Yeah, maybe it was July 15th.
Would there be any benefit in harmonizing the review dates with the salary actions or the salary requests when we start the budget? So should they be done,
Prior to?
yeah, closer to the budget? See, I mean, I don't, typically, at least in organizations I've worked with, there's been a review process that is closely followed by a compensation process, and they usually are related. I know that here, it's not really a meritocracy, it's, we tend to give a blanket raise, for lack of a better term, but I think it would still be good to understand performance and compensation.
Yeah, I agree. It's helpful to have it done before we start the budget process. So I think by the end of the summer would be appropriate, because we really start budget again this time of year.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on that, Bob? Status of basketball courts, Mr. Tovo and I spoke, so the only issue I asked is if we could find out if it helps to extend it to the first job of the spring rather than the last job of the week, and that was all.
And I agree, it will help, and I've already sent the email requesting that.
Thank you.
Mike,
Any-
can I
any-
make one comment about central cashier?
Sure.
If I may? And it's just up to council. Right now, when we collect the construction code fees, they're all being lumped together as construction code fees, okay? In the past, I would separate those out. You could think about it, because we could do it by plumbing, electricity, so on and so forth. Sarah had given me a sample of reports that they have. I don't know if you'd like to see something like that at the finance end. Like, if you were to come to me and say, listen, can you tell me what we collected in plumbing for the month, I could show you that.
I think it's a self-funded department,
I
so
mean,
as long as they can prove that they have the funds to keep the inspectors that we need, I
You
think
okay
that's
with
the.
that? I mean, I just figured
right?
I'd put it out there,
Okay.
I think we should have it at the lowest level of
detail.
detail that we can get. So if the fees are received and they're drawn under separate responsibilities or separate functions, plumbing, electrical, whatever it is, they should be recorded at that level. So if we need to analyze it, we have a clear understanding of where those fees are coming from.
Or we could talk about it next month if you want. I just figured I'd put it out there because, like I said, she could run the report, but then when she filled out her receipts, she can actually allocate them and tell me building, electric, CCOs, whatever have you, and then I could do the same thing on the revenue side. So if any of you came to me one day and said, listen, can you tell me what we collected for the month in plumbing, I could give you that like this.
Okay.
I mean, that's something for you to discuss. It's, I figured I'd put it out there.
So, Judy, while we're speaking of detail, one of the things I failed to mention with the public event fund is I think there's $3,800 of DMF overtime in there. Overtime is budgeted on a separate line item with a separate department. So the minute we start taking, it's good informational purposes, and if we knew what they spent on all the events, that's how we would budget. but a budget line item for salaries / overtime should be charged to those line items. The minute you take it out, we lose the integrity of how much we're paying employees to work either straight time and/or overtime. So there's a $3,800 entry in there that needs to be reclassed and has to go to the DMF overtime, because it's not, salary should not be in it.
Okay, I can ask Dina why she did it that way,
Yeah, it just shouldn't be in there.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's anywhere else, but all salaries are in salaries. And the only way we know how much we spend for straight time and overtime is to see the amount. And technically, when we budget overtime, you know, if the department head says we spent $4,000 for a summer concert, $5,000 for this, and then if we have leave, snow, we have a number. And that's,
Okay.
you know, that's what we know with the tax on.
Motion to adjourn?
Aye. So moved. Aye.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next regular meeting of the Township Council will be on Wednesday, November 6, 2019, beginning at 7:30 PM. Thank you, everyone.